It is down to a matter of hours now. The mailers, the emails, the text messages, the radio ads, the TV ads, well, they've all led us to this day. And we are this close to calling it a day. As for calling the races, that's going to come on a little later, much later. But we have a full night of election coverage on tap for you. First, though, we're going to get into some Election Day news, notes, and some questions with our chief political reporter. That would be Joe Paris, who joins me now. Joe, this is, well, a lot of people call it one of the biggest days when it comes to primary elections in Idaho history.
Yes, and you know, to be honest, and I know it sounds like hyperbole, it seems like every primary election becomes bigger and bigger because of how many people are coming into the state of Idaho. But yes, with every election day comes the question, how many people will actually get out there and vote? And the truth is, percentage-wise, very few people will. Even with the major governor's race, far less than 50% of registered voters vote or are expected to vote today. So what is the projection for today? Any idea out there? Well, a heated governor primary could add more people, but Chief Deputy Secretary of State Chad Houck has this insight and prediction.
30-35 has been a number that we've certainly seen thrown around. Some of the early numbers support it. We had, I spoke with Saul Saylor over at Ada County late last night looking at some of their absentee returns, and we've seen some definite increases in absentee requests that went out. For reference, the last time we had one of these elections with governor candidates on the ballot was 2018. There were about 8,000 absentee requests in Ada County at that time. This year, more like 18,000 requests in that space. So we've definitely seen an uptick there.
Moving on, a unique note about Idaho elections. When you vote at the polls, in person at the polls on Election Day, after you vote, there's a special announcement. Something like this.
Imani has voted. Chris has voted. Gary?
Thank you.
Harry has voted. What's your name?
Mary.
Mary has voted.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you voted, you know what's going on. You know, they do that right after you vote. So what's it all about? A tradition, something important? Well, Houck explains the ins and outs of that tradition.
So that has some historical significance, and that was the kind of the exit clerk, if you will, that's making that proclamation. We used to have a log at the end of the process that they would mark your name down there. And the declaration of that name was originally set for poll watchers, where they typically would sit is at that exit point. And they would have a list of the people that their specific candidate, remember poll watchers are designated by candidates, poll challengers designated by parties. But the poll watcher would sit there and they'd have a list of people that they were expecting to show up in that community at that precinct to vote for their candidate. And if by the end of the day, they hadn't checked that name off the list, that gave them a list to be able to go out and say, hey, we know Joe Smith was supposed to come in and vote for our candidate today. Maybe Joe needs a ride to the polling location, and the campaign would go about trying to follow up with that voter directly.
I kind of misspoke. I shouldn't say it's a tradition. It's actually written into Idaho code that they have to like audibly say that out loud. They're going to say, Brian has voted. That's part of state code.
Okay, but it also, that traditional part of it is kind of interesting.
Yeah, it is. So it kind of shows how function has changed over the years. But anyway, some other Election Day thoughts for you. We've heard some claims in Ada and Canyon County today about poll watchers or poll volunteers wearing buttons, stickers, or some type of candidate support as a part of their outfit, accessorizing on Election Day. Now, viewers reached out asking, is this allowed? Does political signage follow people all the way up until the final moment they vote? Houck says, no, it's not supposed to.
Anything within 100 feet of a polling location, you're not allowed to communicate the name of a candidate in any way. The express sole exception to that, if you will, is a candidate going in on their own to vote their ballot. They obviously have to proclaim their name when they go to the polling, to the poll book to sign in. So they're allowed to do that as long as they get into the polling location, vote their ballot, and head on out.
So if hypothetically you showed up to vote, I don't know, in the next 3 hours and you see somebody wearing a sticker or a button endorsing a candidate, they're not supposed to be doing that, and you're asked to alert the election precinct about a violation there. But Brian, I got to tell you, at this point of the day, there's a good chance that anyone was wearing a sticker or a button against the rules. It's probably been removed at this point.
It's probably, but there's still 3 hours still to go, and anything can happen in the next 3 hours. We're starting to see some lines form up there, but that 30 to 35% that Deputy Secretary Houck mentioned, that would be a bigger number compared to what we've seen over the last previous primaries going back to even, I don't know, last 10 years, 12 years or so, where they've kind of hovered in the 20s when it comes to voter turnout.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see this year just what the interest is in this governor's race. I mean, very literally, and we talked about this on the 208. The truth is, there's a very strong chance that whoever wins the Republican primary for governor will end up being the governor elected in November. So the race today, with such a heavy Republican emphasis and really population in Idaho, it's a big deal. But as you ask the question, well, do people not care about who's governor, or do they care as much as who the president is? If you look at presidential primary cycles or presidential cycles, you'll see almost double the amount of people get out to the polls. It just begs the question, do people care more about who the president is, who realistically does not have as much control over their everyday life, compared to somebody like the governor, who does have more of a say over your everyday life? And then you can really exaggerate this conversation all the way down to your school board. We've seen just like the effects that some of these local elections have. So it is interesting. We'll be keeping an eye on turnout. Another note we're keeping an eye on, there's a very good chance that Idaho surpasses 1 million registered voters today. I was talking with Houck earlier, as you saw in the interview, and he told me that we actually have passed 1 million voters in the past, but because of the way that the voter rolls work, if you register to vote, you vote, and then you don't vote for a long time.
10 years or so.
Yeah. You're removed.
Right.
So it's possible you could be from 1 million and then go down. But we needed about 10,000 people to register at the polls, which you can do in Idaho. Several clerks I spoke with they would say there's a decent chance that Idaho surpasses 1 million registered voters, which is a big deal. To be clear, though, just because there's 1 million registered voters doesn't mean 1 million people are voting. Probably about 35% of that.
Another interesting tidbit, Idaho has a lot of unaffiliated voters.
Yes.
And a lot of them would like to remain that way, and so they don't necessarily take part in the primary because they're like, I'll just wait for the general election.
And that's part of the reason why there's low turnouts in primaries. So there you go.